Okay, so today we're focused on checks and balances. You cannot complete today unless you know your tree. So we will work towards making sure that this is memorized. So to start out with, I like to say gel. Because remember, if you tell me, Miss Howard, judicial, executive, and legislative is the three branches of government, great, you failed, because that is not the most important part. And our Constitution rarely even says those words. It talks about the groups. So you would have to know, and how many leaves are on each branch? 3. So I know I have Congress, and I'm going to be really short. H of R is House of Representatives, and I have my Senate. And then we grew 2 branches yesterday here at the Constitutional Convention, and we grew a president, a VP, and his cabinet. And then our 3 branches here are Supreme Court, our Chief Justice, and, well, not from the trunk here, and there's judges. Now, the bad part is we drew it on this side when really we need it on the other side. But you can look at the poster in the room if you need to use it. I make sure that I always have this drawn because you would really need to use it to apply. You cannot do the principles of government without these strategies, and I expect to see your work. Some of the words we're going to be using is some of the same stuff. These are our leaves from our tree. Remember that veto means to say no. And when you see the word impeach, that's what we do to basically, when we impeach someone, they are fired. That is when someone that works in the government basically gets fired because they were not in good behavior and they did something naughty. We have impeached some presidents, so for naughty behavior. Alrighty, so this is very similar to yesterday with separation of powers. It is the same thing. So for people that are doing this virtually, you have to figure out how to add circles, use the circles, and write in a text box the letters up here because you have to use this strategy. I would use this strategy. So here is quotes from the United States Constitution, because how can we continue to learn about the Constitution and never read it? We have to read parts of it. So here's how this works. First off, we are still looking for leaves, just like we did yesterday. We only have 9 leaves, okay? So that's what we're focused on. So let's look at the first quote. Do y'all see any leaves? Remember, these are leaves, and I'm not going to draw out my tree again, that come from my tree. I am a horrible tree drawer. So let's try this. Let's look at the first one. Is president a leaf? It is. What branch does it hang off of? The executive. So I put an E. United States is not a leaf. So some people will start to think federalism, and you'll see how this works when I give you all of them together, and you'll really get a deeper understanding. Oh, Chief Justice. Is that a leaf? Oh, it is. What branch? Oh, isn't that nice? Okay. Here's my question. You have to ask yourself on your own when taking a test. Am I on one branch or 2? If I'm a frog, did I stay on one branch and hop from leaf to leaf on one branch? Or am I a frog that jumped from one leaf on one branch to another leaf on another branch? I've jumped from 2 different branches, right? Because look, if this is executive, and here's the president, here's Chief Justice, and here's the judicial branch. Look at this. I'm a frog. I'm jumping from leaves. Oh, but I jumped onto another branch. I didn't just jump around on the same branch, different leaves. I jumped to another branch. That makes me checks and balances. So I'll show you how this works. So this quote says, when the president of the United States is impeached, fired, the Chief Justice shall preside. So over that case. So James Madison put things into the Constitution so that these branches have control over each other. And sometimes they can't even do something without permission from the other, without being checked on by the other. That keeps everybody in check. So nobody can do too much of crazy things. So here's what we're looking at. This says, when the President of the United States is fired, the Chief Justice shall preside. So they get to be in charge of that court case, the Chief Justice. So I'm wanting to know who is checking on who. Who in this case has power over somebody else? So the Chief Justice gets to be over the court case when a president is going to be impeached. That means the Chief Justice is showing how he is checking on the president because he has power in this situation. So the judicial branch is checking the executive branch. In this case, the judicial branch is like, what'd you do? Okay, let's hear this case. I'll be in charge of this. Okay, we're going to try the next one, and you'll kind of get the pattern as we go along. We're looking for leaves. Find me some leaves. Let's see if you can find them on your own. 20 seconds or less. Okay. Shout out a leaf. House of Representatives. And what branch is that hanging on? The legislative. What else? Senate. What branch is that hanging on? What else? What branch? Okay. Now I've got two. My frog has gone from here, and then he hopped over here. But then look at this. He hopped to a whole nother branch. Because I have an L and an E, I am talking about two branches. So I know it's checks and balances. Because I have at least two branches. I did not say leaves. And you yesterday told me you know the difference between a branch and a leaf. I need you not to forget that. So for example, if I said, Christy, go check on the dog in the corner. What are you going to say to that? Is there a dog in the corner? First, you're going to say, you're a little crazy. There ain't no dog in the corner. So how can I check on something if it ain't there? So it's the same idea with checks and balances. You need two branches. I can't check on another branch unless there's one there. So you have to see that there's two branches. That's what makes us checks and balances. If it's all legislative branch, I'm only talking about their powers. I can't check on myself. You can only check on something else. So there has to be two branches. So this one says and I like to think law, every law which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall be presented to the President of the United States for approval. So the only branch in the United States of America who can write a law. There's no president in history who's ever written a law. That doesn't exist. No president writes laws. They don't have that power. Either does the judicial branch, never written a law. However, the legislative branch, that's their main job. They're lawmakers. So when they write a law and they pass it, they say yes to it, both groups, because remember, great compromise, we have the House of Reps and Senate. The president gets to say yes or no to it. So who's checking who now? Who gets to check on who? Who has the power in the situation? The executive, because they get to say, okay, let me read your law. They could say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read. No. Or they can say, this sounds good. I will sign it off. We have a new law. So in this case, the executive branch is checking the legislative. Why is this good? Well, because what if the legislative branch is together just passing bad laws? This allows us to make sure they're not abusing their power by saying, okay, we're going to give another branch power to say yes or no to this. These branches are separate. However, we gave them certain powers where they can check on each other to make sure naughty things aren't happening. Okay, so let's look for leaves here. 10 seconds. Okay, shout out those leaves. What branch? What else? What branch? House of Representatives. What branch? Okay. So I have more than one branch here, so I could tell myself I know I have checks and balances. This one happens to say if a law is disapproved by the president, it shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So if a president says, "Oh, I'm reading your law. This is the dumbest thing I've ever read," and he says a veto, which means say no, if enough of the House of Representatives, not the majority, 2/3, that's a lot more than the majority, say, you know what, this law is good and we know it. They can say, sorry, President, you're stupid. We're passing this law. That doesn't happen very much because that means that lots of people have to agree in the legislative branch. And that almost never happens. So that is there and it can be used and it can be done. It just don't happen very often. So in this case, who had power in this situation? The legislative branch, because they get to say, hey, 2/3 of us voted, so we're going to have this law anyways. So this is the legislative branch checking the executive. You know what this can do? What if we have a president that just says no to everything? Well, that's a problem. If they're just saying no, 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 then the legislative branch can, if they can come together, they can make laws still happen. Got some more checking. Okay, next one. Find me in 5 seconds some leaves. Okay, shout out those leaves. President on what branch? What else? What branch? What else? Judicial. I got 2 branches, right? I'm checks and balances. I know that because if I got 2 branches, I'm doing some checking. The president shall have the power to appoint or select judges of the Supreme Court, which was in major news because the president just did that. Again, it sounds bad, but some presidents, do you want a Supreme Court judge to die while you're president? I mean, maybe, because that means you get to do something. You get to use a power that only happens if one of them dies. Because they get that for life. And most of them don't quit. They stay the Supreme Court justice until they're dead. They're goners. And so only then does a president get to use this power. So the president shall have the power to appoint judges of the Supreme Court. So who has power over who? That is the executive branch checking on the judicial branch. Okay, try the very last one all by your lonesome. You've got 30 seconds. Let's see if you can do this one too. Okay, this one's actually tricky. What leaves do I have? President, which would be what branch? Senate is what branch? Legislative. I have 2 branches, so you tell yourself, okay, this is checks and balances. So now it says the president shall have the power with the, what does this mean? Consent to say yes. So the president shall have the power only with the yes of the Senate to make treaties. So this one is actually tricky on who's checking who. Because, oh yeah, you have this power, but only if somebody else says yes, you can. So this one is actually the legislative branch checking on the executive. Because, yeah, you can do this, but only if someone tells you you can. So that one is a little tricky on that one. Okay, I will tell you something. You will have a quote much like these on a test. Your multiple choice answers look like this. You'll have something like this, and it will say, um, which of the following principles of government are shown in this quote? Multiple choice will look like this: separation of powers, checks and balances, federalism, and then something random like pancakes. That's not a principle. Well, guess what? Every single time that the answer is checks and balances, separation of powers will be in your multiple choice. Every time it's separation of powers, it'll have checks and balances. Why? Number one thing students make a mistake on. You are not analyzing it close enough to tell the difference between separation, checks, and balances. I have made you a strategy that works 99.9999% of the time, always. And so if you're not doing this strategy, I will look. If you get one of these questions wrong on the test, the first thing I do is look at your test and see, did you use the strategy? If there are two branches, not leaves, you have checks and balances. If there is only one branch, you have separation of powers. That is how you tell the difference. Checks and balances has to have two branches. You can't check on nobody. There's no checking going on here because we're just talking about one branch at a time. Nobody's checking anybody else. We are just identifying what each branch is even allowed to do. And then checks and balances says, okay, you may have this power, but here's how we're going to make sure you don't abuse it. That is checks and balances. Okay, tomorrow is going to be your last two, which is popular sovereignty republicanism. Then we're going to put them all together and see how you can tell the difference between them using your strategies.